Hey Puckheads, Jacob Bourne here. Firstly, thank you for tuning in to Born to Puck, whether it be on WordPress, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or however else you found it. We really appreciate you guys coming in and listening. Please subscribe and tell your friends about us. The more Puckheads, the better. Secondly, please excuse the technical difficulties we have today's episode. Unfortunately, there's only so much you can do in post-production. Finally, you can chirp on Twitter with us at Jacob Bourne, Jacob_Bourne, or at Matt Riegler, MatTriegler, or email us at borntopuck@gmail. Thanks again, and remember to chirp what you love.
Jacob Bourne is on the radio. Wait, I think I've heard that jingle before. We can't use that on air. Jacob Bourne, you're still alive. Oh my God.
I am still alive. Thankfully, nothing has collapsed out of the ceiling yet.
What's it like when you're doing a podcast and suddenly radiator fluid is leaking on your brim?
It was the weirdest thing because I swore it was raining. Like, it sounded like it was raining right behind me. And so I turn around because I'm in my living room. And then so I'm listening, I'm hearing you talk, and then all of a sudden it's just like this pat, 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 pat behind me. And I look outside and there's nothing raining.
Masturbating?
No, there's nobody masturbating, thank the Lord. and so then I keep hearing, like, this pitter-patter of rain, and then I look over, and I look up to the right, and I just see water running down my wall. And then so that's when it instantly clicked in that there was water in my room that was coming down into the room right below me. And so that's why I had to leave, is because I needed to figure out how to cap my radiator. And it turned out to be a big whole mess.
How does one cap a radiator? I imagine it's not like capping an ass.
No, it is not like capping an ass at all. Normally, you just turn off the knob to the radiator, but the pipe split right at that knob, so we had to go downstairs into the basement and turn off the water altogether. Twice.
Wait, you had to make it doubly shut?
Well, no, we thought we turned it off once, and that did not turn out to be the case. And then we turned it off again. And then finally we figured out how to turn it off, and so we turned it off. And then the next day we found another split pipe, so we had to turn it off again.
My God, what is going on in the Bourne household where pipes are bursting?
Well, no, this isn't the Bourne household. This is my house up at school.
Well, I imagine that either way you're the man in the house.
Yes, I'm one of the men in the house.
Well, and, you know, for all intents and purposes, for me, you're the man in the house. So, again,
yes.
What is going on in the Bourne household that is causing pipes to split?
The record cold that came through last Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what started it all, and then it was all of it unthawing that happened to split everything.
My God, living in Milwaukee just sounds like an absolute treat.
It is a blast. There are a lot of bars, so it's a lot of fun, and you get that drunk blanket a lot. But, yeah.
All right. Well, Jacob, I don't know how to follow that up and transition naturally into the fact that I played goalie as a Rangers fan for a team named the Devils in one of the New York City street hockey leagues. And when I tell you that I did my best Chris Terreri impression, it was somewhere between that and Johan Hedberg. I made saves that nobody thought that I could, and then I also got beat on a dribbler from the point when I thought it was going cross ice, and it beat me short side from 50 feet away. And it didn't come off the ground.
That's awful.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was really embarrassing. And that's what I got up and I said, is I'm so embarrassed I got beat on that shit.
So what is it like playing goalie in street hockey? Because I feel like it's a lot of just like stand-up old school style of goaltending.
So a lot of guys play butterfly anyway. And I get it because at some point you're going to be down on your knees and if you get there early and you're tall like I am, like you wave your mitt and your glove around. So that I get, but I am not that flexible. So I play old school stand up. That I refuse to go down to my knees unless I absolutely have to. And usually my first move is to poke check into a double pad stack.
I was just about to ask if you stack the pads most often.
Yeah, I totally stack the pads most often at anyone in the league. It's not even close. And I made a couple of 2-pad stacks on desperation moment type plays where there's a scramble in front of the net. I'm just gonna lie there and let it hit me. As well as at the very end, we were up 3-2. We went up 3-2 with like 80 seconds left, and the other team pulls their goalie, so it's 6-on-5 mad scramble in our end. And yeah, I didn't like lie down and stack them on the last one. They finally got wind of I don't move laterally sufficient enough to not pass it from the left wing to the right wing and one-time it. So they finally did it, and I have to go from left to right, and I didn't stack my pads so much as I just threw my legs out to the right as quickly as I could and as tightly together as I could. And either way, though, I stonewalled their asses. And guess what?
That is what?
Devils win, baby.
The Devils won 3-2. Fantastic.
Feels good.
So when I was growing up, at least this is my view of street hockey. When I was growing up, we used to have a cul-de-sac, and we used to stick pretty much one goal on one side of the cul-de-sac. It would be like right on one of the tar lines on the street, so that way you had a pretty solid goal line. And then you pretty much went 180 degrees, and then you put the other goal right there. So you couldn't necessarily see the other goal. And we just kind of had almost like a half circle sort of rink. So my question to you is, was it actual street hockey, or was it in an enclosed rink and with rollerblades and stuff like that? Because we always played on shoes and sometimes rollerblades.
A little bit of both. So in Manhattan, as you imagine, there isn't a lot of room for anything or anyone.
Mm-hmm.
However, down on the Lower East Side by the FDR is Tannehy Park. It's on the corner of Cherry and Catherine. And the league that plays there is called Mofo, Hockey with Balls. It's 5-on-5, foot, non-contact.
Okay.
The goalies don't wear skates. Nobody wears skates. That's what it's called foot. And in street hockey, in that we are playing on pavement, but we are also in a rink.
Okay.
So I don't know the actual measurements, but it looks like it's about 60%, 75% of a normal rink. And it plays really well like this on 5-on-5. We have running time except for when there's a penalty, as well as if there's a deficit within 2 goals inside the last 2 minutes. So the games, even with overtime or a shootout, games are usually done within 75 minutes, usually within 60 minutes. And
how long are the periods? 20?
Yeah, 20 running.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun. Most teams have 10 to 16 people on it. I've been in this is actually my 5th or 6th season, but there are 2 seasons in a calendar year. So this is my 3rd year, and I was on a mostly Asian Canadian, actually. Torontoites and Vancouverans made up most of the team, and they were called the Loonies, and I was on this team, and I'm still technically on it. I came into this particular season on a hiatus. I had a falling out with the commissioner for a lot of ridiculous reasons and also a lot of legitimate reasons. I had also become friends with people around the league because I worked for the league. I helped organize some of the things. I score kept. I helped referee, and other things. So, while I'm not on the Loonies right now, I'm not on the active roster. I'm on the reserve roster. I joined my friend's team after like 8 or 9 months ago, like last year.
Okay.
I joined the friends league because their goalie went down with injury, and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you think you could fill in today?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Just give me the pads. I'll fill in." I was captain of my baseball team, and I played catcher, and I just figured I'll just try to play it like that and wing it from there. I'm athletic, I see well. Oh, anyway, so he called me up and he says, "Hey, our goalie, he's not any good. Will you come and play with us?" And I said, "Of course." And yesterday was my first game. They're 7th. We're now 6-2, 1-0 in Riegler's second tour of duty. And I gotta tell you, I'm shocked at how much I had forgotten at how much I loved playing hockey. Regardless, I grew up as a winger, but playing goalie for these guys was just an absolute blast.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling. But here we don't have a street hockey league. However, we do have a floor hockey league.
Mm.
And so what floor hockey is we play it up at our gym in our rec center. And it's the span of a basketball court. So that gives you about the main dimensions. And it's 4-on-4, and you have basically it's just 4 players with sticks, and then the goalies can bring whatever they want. So for our goalie, they can bring whatever they want, any form of pads that they want. So that meant that we had some teams where they just used the goalie stick and the mask that was provided, and that's it. But we also had goalies like my goalie that had a goalie mask. He borrowed my shin guards from when I played, and then he also had a blocker and a glove. So you could kind of use however many pads that you want. And I got put on, this was my first season with the team because they had graduated a couple of guys. And one of my good friends who I lived with was looking for a couple of people to fill in, and so I was one of the guys. And we went all the way to the championship this season, and then we lost 4-2 to a team that had a couple other club hockey players on the team. And it was unfortunate because we were going for the four-peat. I guess the team was going for a four-peat, and I was going for my first championship, and I ended up losing in the championship round.
Aww.
It was unfortunate because we beat them in overtime in the season, and then it kind of pissed us off as they brought their team, and they had what looked to be a couple of their roommates or floor mates that dressed up in full suits and were pretending to be coaches, and they had music playing the entire game, and it just pissed us off so much because they were just, I don't know, I guess not taking it seriously isn't the right word, but it was basically these kids that were just hamming it up the entire time, and we were getting so pissed off because they were getting in the way, and it was just frustrating.
Oh, I'm sorry. Last year, my primary hockey team, the Loonies, started out 7-0. We lost our last 3 games. One of them we should have won, and then we got bounced in the first round. So that was irritating because we were the number 1 seed. And then in wiffle ball in the Palisades WBL, my Giants, we had tied the all-time best regular season record. We're like second or third, the all-time longest winning streak.
Oh wow!
We were 19-3, and then we had a first round bye, but we didn't win a playoff game.
Oh no! I have a question. Is the team named the Loonies? Is that a reference to the Henrik and Daniel Sedin commercial?
Oh, I don't know. I just thought you were going to talk about the Canadian dollar.
Well, it's a Canadian dollar, but remember, there's this NHL commercial, and I'll throw it up on the blog because it's super easy to find, and it's freaking hilarious. And it's these guys that are having a bachelor party, and then they're apparently getting Russian twins. And then you see Henrik and Daniel just knock on the door.
Yeah, yeah. That was when they had the Messier era jerseys.
Yeah, and then the end of the commercial, he goes, "How much did you get?" And he goes, "I just got a loony." And I remember people just cracking up about that. And since you said that there were guys who were Vancouverites, I don't know if it was a reference to that.
I don't know. It was started between one from Vancouver and one from Toronto. It might have been. I don't know. I got to ask him.
But yeah, so that was just a question I had for you.
Do you like playing out of position? I love it. It gives me a whole new perspective.
See, that's the interesting thing is when I was been growing up, I started out as a right winger, but then I moved back to D a couple of times just because our team had been injured there, or they needed somebody to drop back or whatever. And then in high school I played center, so I pretty much played all the positions except for goaltender. Goaltender is the only position that I never actually consistently played when I've been growing up.
Oh.
However, I do like playing goalie every once in a while if we have all the gear, just because it's just a different position and it's just different, and it's a lot of fun to be that different and just know that you're kind of the last line of defense and you're always in whenever, no matter what's going on in your zone, you are always the center of what's going on. And so I remember my final practice in high school, I threw on our goaltender's gears and he borrowed my gear, and so I played goaltender, and I wasn't anything spectacular. But it was fun just being in there and making a couple of glove saves or whatever. So that was a lot of fun.
It's so much fun playing goalie. I grew up playing forward, and I started out at center, and then I stopped growing, so I went over the wing until I started growing again. But anyway, I prefer to play the wing. It comes to me more naturally.
Okay, and that's why I like playing center a lot better, is because I'm naturally one of those guys who gets down, like, that is a little bit more defensive-minded than offensive-minded, so for me, center was just a better position for me.
Oh, and so I like grinding more, and so, a wing is...
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys that really gets a lot of confidence when my back is against the wall, because I fully believe in myself and my teammates that despite this adversity, we can come back and do this, and so I kind of power up. But as a goalie, you can't do that. If anything, that's the worst thing you could do. When things aren't going well or when you're frustrated, that's when you have to stay calm the most. So not being able to go to my old mental tricks and forcing me to come up with new ones and to stay focused in a new way, I really enjoy the challenge of it. It's so much fun.
All right, so I'm going to ask you an interesting question. So, did you ever play goaltender in your forward pads, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, and no.
Okay, because there was this one game my junior year of high school. Our goaltender was out in the Bahamas for Christmas. So, and we didn't have a backup. So for 2 games, we were going to have to play without a goalie. One game, we decided one of our players was a lacrosse goalie, so we decided that we were going to put him in net. He let in 8 goals, and we lost 8-0. Woo! So, but what was hilarious is in one save, he went down and stacked the pads and stopped the guy. And then our entire student section started chanting brick wall, which was hilarious.
That is hilarious.
That was one of those that was a good thing for us, because we just laughed at it. It was like we already knew we were losing the game, so it was kind of one of those fun moments. But in the second game, we were playing a much better team than we lost 8-0 to. So what our coach decided to do was he was going to put another kid in the goalie pads, and he would play him for about half the game. The other half of the game, he decided that we were just going to skate 6 guys and we'll just play without a goalie, and we'll pretty much not fare any much better than if we had him in anyways. So the 6th guy wouldn't really do anything, though. He would just kind of camp out at like the blue line, in between the blue line and the center ice line. And if they got the puck, no matter what, you were supposed to start skating back. It was the weirdest strategy I'd ever heard, but he was the coach, so we kind of had to do it. And I ended up I was ended up being like the sixth guy. So when the puck would ever come in our zone, I would just be chilling in the crease with like my right hand open and my left hand on my stick, trying to like kind of play goaltender while these guys were shooting at me. And there's 2 goals went like right in, like nothing. And then there's this one time where this kid took a shot from probably about the top of the left circle if you're facing out, and he came up and I did a kick save. And I was so proud of myself because I made a kick save. And the kick save went immediately to the guy on the back door who instantly roofed it over my outstretched glove hand as I tried to sweep it and possibly stop it. But yeah, so that was probably the most interesting playing out of position experience that I've ever had playing hockey.
I'm a really aggressive goalie, and part of it is because I'm not a very patient person, but also it's because it's rec hockey, and I firmly believe in the best thing you could do to your opponent is take away time, and they'll just cough it up, or they won't do the thing that they wanted to do. So I try and cut down angles, or even dislodge possession. But also when there's either a potential icing, or when there's someone charging down on my D-man and the ball is near me, I will go and strafe out and go play it. I will come out and I will be really aggressive as a goalie. And one time when we were on the power play, the other team was changing, and there was like 2 of my guys just chilling at the red line. I came out to almost the blue line to just smack a headman pass out to him. And he went on 1-on-none. And you didn't score, but it was the strangest thing. It was like the seas parted, and it was just me, the ball, 2 of my teammates, and the other goalie. And if I could just get it to him quick enough, maybe we can tie the game. I felt like
So you decided, yeah, I was just about to ask, did you feel like Brodeur or Patrick Waugh? Do you remember that?
Yeah, totally. I kind of did, because I kind of did. I mean, you gotta just take advantage of opportunities to score a goal. You don't get a lot, and you can't count on it squeezing through the goalie or getting a weird deflection. Like, if you see an opportunity to go assert yourself offensively, you've got to do it. And it doesn't matter that I'm the goalie. If I'm 5 steps away and I can smack the ball to him, then I got to go do it. It's my obligation. I can't play that shit safe.
Okay, so the Patrick Waugh thing, that happened against the Rangers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But now your sports teams are in the spotlight for not so fun things.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your opinion on the A-Rod suspension and his now suing of the Players Association and the MLB?
First and foremost, I don't really give a shit about what happens to him. The result that I want is that I want to know what it is that these players have been doing, why they've been doing it, how they've been doing it, what their intended results were, what their results have been. Whether it's Rodriguez or Braun or Sean Hill or George Laraque, or honestly, I don't give a shit who it is. When it comes to PEDs, I have so many more other pertinent questions. Like, what are the chemicals that they are taking? How do they affect the body, short-term and long-term? Are we certain that these things are drugs as opposed to medicines? What is the difference between a drug and a medicine? When does a medicine become a drug? And when does a drug stop being a medicine? And other things like that. And finally, I want to see MLB really get challenged on the way that they go about their proceedings. I don't agree that a league, any of the leagues, should act autonomously in a legal sense. They should be just as subject to the American judicial system as every other citizen in this country. And so I'm hoping for at least 2 results. That MLB is forced to go through an actual American judicial system, as well as that we find out everything that A-Rod was doing and why it was important that he did it.
I believe that the MLB and the MLBPA, or I guess the MLBPA, well, yeah, both of them will have to, in this A-Rod case where he's suing them, because I believe that's got to go through all the civil courts. And
but that's only if they accept the case. To quote Wendy Thurm in her article, and you can find this on the blog, they are loath to accept a case in which an arbiter has already declared a decision.
Almost like a court system, not necessarily like a court system, a court case, but an arbitrator hears both sides and then makes a decision based off of past precedences and the current situation that's going on, and based off of what the, I can't think of, collective bargaining agreement, what the collective bargaining agreement says. So that's why I agree with going on A-Rod's suspension from the reduction to 211 games to 162 games plus postseason. That was the right call because, let's be honest, the 211 games was from Bud Selig, so that way A-Rod would not play the rest of the 2012 season, and so he would be banned for the entire 2013 season. That was the overall goal, was for A-Rod not to play until the beginning of the 2014 season. I believe that was the overall goal of the suspension.
I completely agree with you. A fun fact about A-Rod's suspension, how it affects the Yankees monetarily. Players are paid per game.
Yes.
The amount of days in a season is 183. 183 is 21 more days than there are games in Major League Baseball. And so there's a disconnect between how much, financially there. So the Yankees are still on the hook for roughly $3 million, despite the fact that A-Rod cannot suit up for the Yankees once the regular season begins, which is just absurd.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I feel
that's a technical piece of shit that is a Steinberg issue.
Yeah, I don't think that the Yankees should have to pay, and I believe that's why A-Rod is fighting this case so hard, is because he knows that if he loses, then he is pretty much done with baseball. I mean, because I feel like that by his suspension, the Yankees could probably find a clause in their contract where they can null it, and then
Nope.
Oh, they can't?
Nope. It would have happened in other similar cases, whether it was Pettit or Bonds or Giambi, just to name three. Rodriguez is very different, but the crux of the matter is very similar. And neither the Giants, the Yankees, or the Astros were able to come up with anything that voided the contracts. Now, Alex, between now and the start of the 2015 season, can do many, many, many things that can void a contract. And whatever those things are already explicitly written in his contract. Like, here's a good one. The way Alex became a Yankee was, it started when Aaron Boone, at the 2004 Yankees third baseman, 2003, excuse me, he was playing pickup basketball with his friends and his brother, and he blew out his ACL in his contract. It's explicitly written that if he's caught playing basketball, that it voids his contract. Well, he blew out his knee and playing basketball. He was out for the year, and it voided his contract. And then,
wow.
Yeah, and then some odd time later, the Red Sox tried to trade Manny Ramirez straight up for Alex Rodriguez, in part agreeing that Alex was going to reduce the monetary value of his contract. The PA stepped in and said that he was not allowed to do that. Without the reduction of his contract, his value of his contract, the Red Sox said that he would not become a Red Sox. They would not make the trade. And so the Yankees swooped in and traded Alfonso Soriano and a career bench player who had been recently signed. I don't remember his name. To the Rangers, and as long as he agreed to shift over to third base, and he did. That's the short story of how Rodriguez became a Yankee. But yeah, there's a time for him to do things to void his contract. As of right now, he has not done anything to void his contract.
Okay. And then the second point you were talking about was you want to know why people took the steroids, what they were trying to accomplish, what it's doing to the body left and right.
Yeah.
I honestly could not care less as to why they decided to do it. Because to me, the overall reason to do it was because they are put on the field to do the best, to play the game the best of their abilities. A-Rod,
Yes.
and the best of A-Rod's abilities was to hit 30 home runs, drive in 90-plus guys, play third base.
Yeah.
And he artificially made himself better than his overall best capabilities. And that is cheating, and because he's cheating, he should be suspended. End of story. Doesn't matter why he was doing it. Same reason in school. You could decide to plagiarize a paper because you had 17 hours worth of studying and you just couldn't find the other, and you had to sleep for the other 6, and that 24th hour of the day was used to copy and paste a paper. Doesn't matter to me why you did it. The fact you did it, you're going to be punished. And I feel like it should be the same way with these athletes and steroids, because they're not helping themselves because they're artificially enabling them to do better than the person who is not doing that and who's playing the game clean.
Okay, I hear you, and I'm glad that you brought that up, but that is not the why that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the justification of one's actions. I'm looking for the reason why that they took the particular supplement or drug, whichever word you'd like to use, that they took. I want to know what the intent was, and not just to get better, bigger, faster, stronger. I want to know exactly what they were going for. Like, I want the nth degree of reasoning and detail. I want to know the science behind it. Actually, that's the best way to put it. I want to know the exact science, both intent and results, behind these people's actions. And I'm not so quick to say that because it's unnatural, then it's bad. Advil isn't natural. I'm telling you, Advil is a good thing. Antibiotics are not a natural thing. I'm telling you, antibiotics save literally countless lives every year, every day. Just because something is man-made doesn't mean that it's inherently bad. And just because it was made in a lab doesn't mean that it's inherently nefarious. We need to start coming up with defined lines. And this is really tough. I'm asking people to take what is blurry and define it. Where a medicine and a drug really differs. Truly differs. As an asthmatic, I can tell you that line is really blurry, especially in a high cardiovascular sport like hockey.
My question is whose job is that then to come up with those definitions? Is it the leagues? Is it the leagues players associations? Or is it these like institutions that universities or drug companies or something like that where they are the ones to do it? Because like I agree with you. Things like Advil and antibiotics are good, and they're made in a lab because they help people get better and overcome their sicknesses. Whereas, and I feel like that's totally different than using steroids, which things are perfectly fine. And then
Not necessarily, and
I would agree. I mean, not necessarily. Yes, because I mean, you have guys like Andy Pettitte who took what was, I believe it was a legal substance at the time, but it turned out to be illegal later. And then.
Oh yeah, and then that's a totally different conversation where I find it so uninteresting to talk about whether or not Mark McGuire is a cheater, because at the time, a lot of the stuff he was doing was just not illegal. I may not agree with doing anabolic steroids, but if there's no rule against it, how do I hold it against you? It's not like we forgot to say that murder was illegal. We weren't thinking about a chemically based supplement in that form being used by athletes.
Right, exactly. It's like one of those things, it isn't against the rules. It's not that it's legal, it's just not against the rules. And like guys like Mark McGuire, I mean, yeah, he's got the asterisk next to his name because he took steroids. But the problem was that it like you said, that it was legal at the time. So how do you fault a guy for saying, hey, this is legal and it makes me better, so I'm going to use it because it's not against the rules. And that's fine. But again, it comes back to what's illegal at the time. And I have a hard time thinking that it's the MLB's or the NHL's responsibility to figure out where those lines are. I feel like they need to. I think it'd be interesting for them to come out and say this is why HGH is illegal and this is why you can't use it. But I'm not going to fault them because it's part of the collective bargaining agreement that the NHLPA put into place where that the MLB can't reveal what they took. It's just an illegal substance because that's what it says in the collective bargaining agreement that was signed between the both sides. So, I mean, I know that was one point you brought up, and so I just think that it's not something that they have to disclose, nor do I kind of really care because all I care about was if it was legal or not.
Fair. All fair. I think that these issues are too important to hide behind any curtain of any kind. This, as with science, just as a discipline, as a study, as a form of knowledge, the more information that you have, the easier it is to become literate. And once you become literate, it's easier to really start to suss out between, how do I say this? It's easier to suss out whether or not something is good or bad. I'm sorry that I'm talking about things in a vague sense, but let me go back to your question about who should be leading the charge here. As is usually the case, teamwork is the answer.
Okay.
Scientists need to be on it. Chemists need to be on it. Nutritionists need to be on it. Doctors need to be on it. Doctors of many disciplines, from head to toe. Organizations need to be on it. Or what I meant were franchises need to be on it. The leagues themselves need to be on it. But it needs to start at a scientific level because while leagues and franchises may have the resources to help fund it, they don't have the resources to perform the necessary research to get an answer. The scientists and the nutritionists and the ones in the lab are doing the work. So what we need are more people trying to figure out the healthy ways in which one doctors the human body, and I will use that term as broadly as merely going to the gym and pumping iron, to literally doctoring the human body, where we're talking about implants, when we're talking about taking in powerful chemicals. Do you realize how many athletes are legally allowed to take things like Adderall?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it makes them, whether it be because they actually have ADD or ADHD, or it just helps them concentrate better on their workout regimen, so that way they can stay focused throughout whatever they do. Yeah, there's a lot of people that do.
Mm-hmm. And how about baseball players, where baseball's constantly coming in and out of focus? Well, while we would never recommend that somebody lets their mind wander when baseball play is out of focus, when it's in between pitches, at the very least, we need to be able to be all in when the ball is in play, or at least about to be in play. Mm-hmm. Baseball players notoriously have trouble snapping back in. And it's not necessarily any one time of the year or time of the day in which it happens. It happens because they're playing 162 games over 183 days. It's just a grind. It's a grind from head to toe, inside and out. And yeah, coffee helps do that, but it wears off really quick. Adderall helps do that at a better level for a longer amount of time. But the drawback from taking Adderall is that your body becomes chemically dependent on it.
Right.
And coffee, while coffee addiction isn't not real, it's not real in the same way like marijuana addiction. It's more of an emotional addiction.
Right. It's more so caffeine as well, more so than just coffee itself.
Yeah, thank you. And so it's more of an emotional addiction rather than a physical addiction, which is what Adderall becomes. And I've been through that. I mean, I grew up taking Ritalin and Adderall and Strattera, and it's awful. It took me 2 years to create a new normal once I went off cold turkey. Probably, I know I didn't need to do cold turkey. It's just the way I ended up doing it. It's awful. But is it a steroid? It kind of is. It's certainly a performance-enhancing drug. So where's the line? Where is the line? There's so many caveats. There's so many nuances to the answer to this question. We need to start figuring it out. And I don't see why we don't. I don't see why we don't let more information out.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting. It's not only the line's blurry, but it's also blurry against sports, because you mentioned Adderall, and Richard Sherman of the Seattle Seahawks was suspended for 4 games, or he got it reduced to 0. I don't believe he was suspended anymore. But he was suspended, or at least accused of it, for using Adderall. And I mean so Adderall is a banned substance in the NFL, whereas in the NHL, HGH isn't even being tested for yet until possibly next season. So I guess my question is, how do you feel the NHL is doing with PEDs, or is there?
I don't know, because I don't understand the basics of it. I can't answer that. I don't understand how testosterone levels fluctuate between man to man or woman to woman. I don't understand recuperative properties. I don't even understand how the body repairs itself while we sleep. So I can't talk to you about HGH. That's a naturally occurring chemical in the human body. So I don't know if I just don't know. It sounds bad, but it sounds bad because over the last 15 years we've been saying only bad things about steroids and HGH. I knew a kid that all throughout high school took HGH supplements, but it was because going to high school, he was a midget. He was literally a midget. Now he's 6 foot.
Damn, that's quite an improvement.
Yeah, and it's really good for him. He was not producing enough HGH to fill out his body. And he would have grown up with many physical issues if he hadn't grown vertically and put on the normal amount of weight. So it was wonderful for him. I have a mother and a sister who live on, for lack of a better way of putting it, medicinal steroids because of their lupus. Like, they wouldn't be here without it. I go back to nuance and intent and long-term versus short-term effects. We need to understand what each chemical and how it's applied relates to those genres. And until we do, I don't know what to tell people. Probably natural is best, is about as definitive an answer I can give you.
I would agree with that, because I feel like this might be my own naive perception of the sport of hockey, but I've never associated hockey with PED use, just because it might just be because the guys are like one of the arguably the most personable of all the big sports, and you don't want to believe somebody like that could do something that's so stigmatized as using anabolic steroids.
Totally, and I've fallen into that trap as well.
Or it just is like you think that, I mean, all you hear about are guys that work out, and these guys are in such good shape, and it's not necessarily about how big you are, it's all about how endurance you have, and about balance.
Yeah, and dude, endurance. Like, how about just drugs or compounds? I'm trying to use the least stigmatized word that still denotes the same concept. But in any event, how about just things that allow the players to recuperate more efficiently? We're not talking about putting on mass. We're not talking about increasing flexibility. We're not talking about focus. We're just talking about, I want to wake up really fresh tomorrow because I blocked 5 shots and I played 30 minutes today. And shouldn't they be allowed to do that?
Right. Are there supplements that do that help rebuild?
Yeah, recoup that. I would feel inhumane if I told Josh Georges, sorry, even though that this drug will help you feel better tomorrow and will make all the owies go away, it's against the rules, so you can't take it. Like, that's just, at some point we're getting into quality of life. And I don't care how much money these people are making. Quality of life matters.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
So, nuance. And probably more natural is more better, but not necessarily.
Yes, I would agree with that. Within the lines of what is specified as legal versus illegal within the respective sport, I would go the most natural way possible.
I'll throw in one more caveat. I'm saying, for me personally, I'm saying natural because it's safer, and not necessarily safer against chemicals, just safer against doing things that are illegal, as well as we're also continuously limited by the amount of science we understand and have at our disposal. And that's why I said at the beginning, we need the scientists to be at the forefront of this, because they're the ones that are giving us the answers and the information. We literally won't know it unless they tell us.
Yep.
Okay. So that's great about steroids. I'm really happy that we had that conversation. Jake,
yeah, I feel like that was really good.
Jake, would you like to move on to teams versus their Olympic count, which we might double back into steroids accidentally? Or would you like to talk about the concept of the Florida Panthers as a cap team?
Because we've talked about the Olympics the last couple of episodes, I say we talked about the Florida Panthers.
Let's talk about the Florida Panthers. Who says that anymore? Come on, let's do it. I
can grasp the concept of the Panthers being a cap team. I just don't know if I could get into my head them going out and signing a big name free agent. Because think about it, they had guys like Todd Bertuzzi, and they had guys like Luongo. I remember seeing Luongo in the All-Star game as a Florida Panther.
He's like the lone representative.
Exactly, that was such a long time ago, and I remember them having those big names. But it just never seems to pan out for Florida. And they've had one good season when they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. But other than that, it's just been hell for the Florida Panthers. So I think it'd be good to have them be a cap team. And I'd like to see them try to get a run and see what they could do in the open market and see if they could actually attract a good player with, quote-unquote, ownership instability.
So we all know the old adage is quite true of winning cures everything.
Yes. 100. Yep. It does.
All right. And when you are a perennial winner, you get a lot of slack, no matter if you are in Miami or Edmonton, right? Yes. So the important thing that the Panthers do, and this is true for every team everywhere, is that they have sustained success. And then money kind of just becomes a tool. Now, with the Panthers, we saw them when they hired Dale Talon. They started throwing money everywhere.
Yep.
And it was cool. It was cool because we saw the Panthers do something that we had never seen them do before, which was sign a lot of free agents and then go and have success. We don't normally see anyone have that kind of success signing through free agency. And some of the guys were Sean Bergenheim and Marcel Gotch. These guys are not difference makers. At least not even in the way that Brian Campbell is, and it's not like he's going to the Hall of Fame. So the concept of the Panthers being a cap team,
but they still put in solid minutes.
Yeah, they're useful. There's no denying that.
Yes.
The idea of the Panthers being a cap team is great and all, but it's sort of the same way the Sabres are always talking about spending money. I don't really give a shit about the money. I give a shit about the quality. It's never about, It's not quality through quantity, volume. It's about actual quality on an individual basis. And they have that in CuJo, and they have that in Barkov, and they have that in Goodbranson, and I believe that they have that in Markstrom. So they have something to build off there. And I just don't understand being mediocre at best and spending $71 million.
I think it's all about the idea that perception is reality.
Is it?
Because, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if a team, you have this perception that kind of staggers back of 2 to 3 years in a player's career. And you think, oh, that guy had it's like Jonathan CuJo. And let me explain for a second.
Okay.
So he had that 50-goal season back in, I think it was 2007, 2008 with the Sharks.
Mm-hmm.
He had that 50-goal season where he scored a bunch of goals. And then even when he had the downslope and he kind of tanked, for the 2-3 years after that, people still said Jonathan CuJo's a good player. And then when the Blues signed him to a 2-way contract on a tryout last year, people still say, Jonathan CuJo, he hasn't been a good player for a few years, but he still could be the good player he was back then. And I feel like
you're talking about legacy. You're talking about the legacy of doing something spectacular and trying to ride that wave into more success.
And that's where the perception of reality comes from.
Okay.
If they spent all that money, and, well, it might not have shown success, they showed the willingness to spend money in order to win. And then that comes around this time. They want to become a cap team, and they can throw money again into free agency. And if they still become a mediocre team and they're spending $71 million, it still makes sense because everybody's thinking, okay, the Florida Panthers are willing to spend money in order to get better. Not necessarily still be good, but just be better. And then it's all about developing that talent along with getting those free agents so that way they can actually start becoming a good team.
Okay. I just emailed you a link to Capgeek's UFA Finder. So I'm looking at the upcoming UFAs, and just for argument's sake, let's just say nobody resigns between now and the beginning of free agency. Who are some of the big names that are out there? There's Joe Thornton. There's Patrick Marleau. Thomas Vanek. Yager. Grabowski. Alfredson. Derek Roy. I always want to say Derek Waugh. Hemsky. Molson. Camilleri. Andrew McDonald. Devin Setoguchi, Brian Callahan, Danny Heatley, Marcel Gotch, and many others.
I mean, but let's think about it for a second. I mean,
who's the LeBron in this joint?
There's no LeBron.
Is there a Chris Bosh?
No, but this is my point. 3 names that stick out in my head right now are Danny Heatley, Devin Setoguchi, and Patrick Marleau, for 3 different reasons. One, Marleau's down on the downswing of his career, and he would be the number 1 guy down in Florida. Yeah. But it's the whole difference of, does Marleau want to be the number 1 guy for the last 3 years of a rebuild, or does he want to go win a cup somewhere?
He's probably going to stay in San Jose no matter what, to be quite honest.
Right. To be quite honest, I would agree. I don't see him being anywhere other.
But I agree with you that if he is to leave San Jose, it's likely to be a place where he can challenge for the cup.
Right. No, but then there's also guys like Danny Heatley and Devin Setoguchi.
Who are totally looking for one more big contract to cash in on because whether or not they deserve it.
Exactly. And also, I mean, Danny Heatley is one of those guys where he is no longer that goal scorer that he was back up when he was with Ottawa or for the years when he was in Atlanta. But going down to Florida, he's going to be the number 1 guy to go to, besides guys like Huberdeau. And so maybe he gets that. Maybe he finds that offensive spark again. Same with Devin Setoguchi. He was great when he was over in San Jose, but then he got traded to Minnesota and didn't really work out too well. Now he's up in Winnipeg, and he's doing pretty good, but not necessarily blowing anybody out of the water. And I could see him being a team that Florida thinks being a middle kind of market guy that the Panthers could land if they threw pretty good money at him, and he could end up, again, having another renaissance, or not. But it's those kind of middle-of-the-pack guys that could consistently put up maybe 30, 40, 50 points a season that I feel like Florida is willing to go to and would land. Because I don't see them getting anybody like Joe Thornton, because I feel like he's going to either re-sign in San Jose or he's going to go to a team that needs a big veteran presence and needs a lot of assists in order to win a cup. I just don't see Florida getting that kind of guy.
All right, so I agree and disagree with what you said, and what I disagree with rather is Heatley and Setoguchi are not coming back. They're just not. Heatley is done. He's not that guy anymore. Setoguchi was that guy for like 2 seasons, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I bet you it was because he was playing with Thornton and Marlowe.
Probably.
He's not that guy. He's 26, but he's not a scorer. Ironically, the Panthers are mired in a, at best, mediocre conundrum where do we want to overspend for mediocrity, or can we, with all this money, can we really go out and get quality players? And in the free agent market for this upcoming year, anybody that would even think about signing with them, they're not that good. They're not that kind of good. And so Florida can go out and do whatever the hell it wants, and it'll be better than finishing in the basement, I guess. But you're not going to build a fan base by finishing as the 8th seed every year.
Well, I would say yes and no. Because, I mean, fans get very frustrated with mediocrity because it's not one or the other. Because they're not really good, but they're not really bad either. Because both fans understand both sides. Fans love it when teams are really good, and they don't necessarily like it when they're bad, but they understand there's a bigger picture to it. So that's where the mediocrity kind of you don't build a fan base. But then again, if you're constantly 8 seed, you're constantly in the playoffs. And once you get those playoffs, 2-3 years in a row in the playoffs, that's how you start building a fan base.
But where does it go from there?
That's with bigger fan base means more money, which means more money you're willing to spend, and it's kind of all on that roll. You see what it kind of all snowballs from that. Because that's what happened with
that is. Oh man, that just sounds like cutting off your feet to get a rocket-powered wheelchair.
I mean, this what happened.
Sure,
with
you're
the
going
Blues.
faster, but is it worth it?
That's what happened with the Blues. I mean, think about it. 2008 was their first year in the playoffs since the lockout. What happened? They were the 6th seed, got bounced by the Canucks in 4. But what ended up happening from there? They took 2 years where they were that 9-10 seed area, and they slowly started filtering the fan base. They kept developing the talent, started bringing in guys, and then they made the playoffs 2 straight years. Now we're in our 3rd, and our window is big.
Okay, but the Blues did something that the Panthers have literally never done. Develop great young talent.
And that's why I said you got to develop the talent along with starting to bring in those guys.
Color me skeptical.
I think that's fine.
But not that I want them to stay bad forever. It's just, it's about quality. So, who do you want more? Do you want the Sedins at their price tag, or do you want Rick Nash at his price tag? You want both. You want the Sedins. Even though it costs twice as much, you're getting 2 players who are high caliber that know how to work together. When you have just a Rick Nash he's good at being a loner, or he's good at playing with others, it's not as effective. The money doesn't come back the same way. And so it's unfortunate, like, for the Panthers, because they're in the negative feedback loop of being bad. And that's really tough to break. And maybe you're right. Maybe the best way to break that negative feedback loop is to overpay for mediocrity so that in the future you can attract better free agents.
Honestly, if I'm the Florida Panthers, I want Connor McDavid.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
I think, honestly, I mean, I would love the fact of them being a cap team, and I feel like they could do it. but I don't think it's a smart move for them. I think they need to draft Connor McDavid because, I mean, he's 16 right now playing in the OHL, and he's already getting comparisons saying that he's the best prospect to come to the NHL since Sidney Crosby. And look what Sidney Crosby's done in Pittsburgh. I'm not saying it's going to be the same thing, but that's one of those talents where you have, and if you already have Jonathan Huberdeau as well, I mean, that could be your Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby combo right there.
Wow, Barkov gets to be Jordan Stahl. What a deal.
And then Markstrom gets to be Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if I'm the front office, you have to seriously take that into account and see if it's actually worth it. Because think how great it would be for Florida to draft Connor McDavid first overall in their home stadium.
Boy.
That's something
that'd be like the Avalanche choosing Seth Jones. Oh, wait.
Exactly. Only that was done in Jersey.
Oh shit! Yeah, I was there. Well, how did I fuck that up?
Oh man, what was it? Sorry, we're gonna go into a little bit of draft talk right now because my roommate, not my roommate, but pretty much the guy I live with here that I'm best friends with, he's a huge Devils fan, and his brother was there when the Schneider trade was announced. So what was it like at the Rock when the Schneider trade was announced by Bettman?
It's what I imagine it's like being at a wrestling match. Like everyone's in on the joke, everyone's in on the wink wink, but then something real happens, and a hysterical hush comes over the crowd until they can't hold it anymore, and they just go, yeah! And they don't know what to do with themselves for like 15 minutes.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was truly an awesome experience. I fully encourage somebody to go to a draft. I never thought I would say that, but if it's in your home city, go. It's a unique experience, and hopefully the home team does something spectacular.
Yeah, that was, when I heard that trade, Blake, that was nuts. I'm trying to think of what it was, but I think there was another sporting event where I was with a group of my friends, and something happened, and we were like, wait, what? And then, like, it finally clicked on what happened, and, oh, no, I know what it was. I was at
The girl said, yes, you would go out with me.
Unfortunately, no, but that was fantastic. No, so I was at the UFC event, up in Milwaukee. It was called Hometown Throwdown. And it was this Milwaukee guy named, Showtime. That's his nickname. I can't think of his first name. And he was fighting this guy named Henderson from Seattle. And it's in the first round, and you see this, he's got, Showtime has Henderson in like an arm bar. And he's got his like legs wrapped around him, everything. And then all of a sudden, you just see Showtime just let go, and he immediately just climbs up onto the cage and starts going nuts. And as this is happening, the crowd is just silent. Nobody knows what's going on. And then all of a sudden, you see the referee just wave his hands over his head, and then it just clicks that it was a verbal tap out. And then it was for a title fight too, so he won the belt. And then the entire place just went nuts because we finally figured out that he had won the fight. And so that's kind of what I imagine you're describing, is that it just went quiet for a second, and then everybody just went freaking nuts.
Yeah. Everybody was, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have put it any better myself. By the way, I think I'm coming around to your point of view about the Panthers, where it's probably best that they at the very least look like that they're trying to succeed. I just think that they shouldn't and draft Connor McDavid.
I would agree with that statement as well. I don't think being a cap team is going to serve them well long term. They have to get the talent there before they start spending the money.
Now, you wanted to talk about the virtues of plus minus, and I can only think to ask why.
Well, it's just something that I think is interesting, because everybody says, not everybody, I'm going to say a lot of people think that plus minus is a useless stat. Because, but see, I have a hard time believing that. Because I do believe I feel like it shows the usefulness of a player when they're on the ice. And I'm gonna give examples about it based off of personal experience. Because I remember, so my dad was the one that always would used to my mom and dad would come to my games all the time when I was playing. And we'd always talk about what happened. And then when I grew up into high school and then I went to my games myself, I used to drive back, but I'd always talk about how the game went. And I remember with a lot of games, my dad asked me, "So how'd you do on the ice?" And it would always, "How'd you do?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I got a couple of goals," or "Oh yeah, I didn't do anything. I didn't get any points." But then he'd also ask, "Well, what happened with the score?" And it'd be like 2-1. But if it was like 6-0, he'd always ask, "Well, how was your plus minus?" And so I would say, well, in a game like 7-2 with the team scoring two or one power play goals, I'd say, "Oh, I finished even." And he goes, "So you were only out on the ice for 0-1 goal out of a 7-goal game?" And I go, "Yeah, pretty much." Well, I feel like that's pretty telling of my own game, saying that I was not on the ice for 6 of their 7 goals. Or vice versa, I was on the ice, if I was a +3, I was on the ice for 3 of our, let's say, 5 goals. So I feel like that's,
in either direction, you're assuming that what you were doing was important.
No, you're just assuming that I didn't make the mistake that led to the goal.
Yeah, and that's a big assumption in and of itself.
I don't know. I feel like I know that there are much more stats. I can't think of the name of it, and maybe it's Corsi, where it shows like how many goals a team scores when a player's on the ice versus off the ice.
Corsi is just the aggregate amount of shots for and shots against. It's just that's all it is when they're on the ice. It's just shots for and shots against.
Oh, okay, maybe that is. But I know that that's kind of like a stat that a lot of sports writers have been using. I just feel like that plus minus isn't necessarily a useless stat because it does give not necessarily a full picture, but maybe like a Pablo Picasso visual of how a player does on the ice with it offensively and defensively for his team.
I mean, it's nice that you think that, but when you can't actually tell me any detail, then something is useless.
What do you mean by something in detail?
You cannot describe to me in detail how plus minus is useful. You cannot also tell me in detail how an individual tally or non-tally, like a power play goal for, is useful in determining the effectiveness of a player. You didn't describe anything that happened on the ice and the individual player's impact on whatever did or did not happen. There are many, many, many more things that happen than just the goal result that are worth tracking. The problem with hockey stats, and this is the problem with stats in general, but in particular with hockey, because it's such a high variable sport, we're not tracking anywhere close to all the variables. The problem with these final result numbers is that they're just that. All they tell you is the end result. And as you know, scoring is a process.
Yes.
And if you cannot describe to me the process, then describing to me the end result, with just merely tallying the end result into one category or another, is misleading. How many 50-goal scorers can we name that took 3 more years to score 50 goals after that? We mentioned one already.
Yeah.
CuJo, right?
Yeah, Perry hasn't scored 50 goals since he got his 50-goal season.
Yeah.
Stamkos didn't he? Yeah, he had 50 in, 2 seasons, and not
yeah,
50 off 50.
and Heatley has done it, but Stamkos and Heatley were scorers. CuJo was not. CuJo was a one-year wonder. Heatley was I think he had 8 seasons of 30 to 50 goals, or a total points scored by an individual basketball player. There's no nuance, there's no context. And without nuance or context, you're just giving me an end result. It's not descriptive enough.
I mean, this is right here. Just like for an example right now, the NHL's leaders in plus minus is Chris Kunitz, who's plus 24. Then it's Jaden Schwartz, who is plus 24. Matt Niskanen, which is plus 24. Andrei Kopitar for the Kings, which is plus 23. And then Marian Hossa, which is plus 23. And I understand what you're saying about how it's an end result versus that just kind of takes into account 3/4 of the amount of goals that are scored on an NHL rink. But, I mean, those 5 guys are all solid guys.
Yeah, they're also on teams that are going to enter the playoffs with home ice advantage.
Yes, and they're also teams that probably have the most
opportunity to win the
goal
cup.
4th or 5. Let's see here. This is goals per game. The St. Louis and then Pittsburgh's 4, and then where are they? Los Angeles is 23. So that's Kopitar, and then Chicago is 2nd. So I get what you're saying by it's an end result, but and maybe it's just because I'm being stubborn or whatever. I still feel like it has some sort of important aspect, not necessarily a full. Maybe it shouldn't be counted as an official stat, but I still feel like it's something that you have to take into account and something that helps form an overall picture of a player's ability on the ice.
Hey man, it's a free country. You can think what you want. I don't agree with you.
Okay.
Well, Jake, listen. I know that you're the one that's in college and getting a journalist degree, but you should listen to the guy who isn't.
Okay.
And plus minus is a stupid stat. And people who believe in stupid stats are not smart people, which is why I think that you should accept Dan Girardi for Corey Perry straight up in the ISHL.
Going to decline that trade.
Are you sure? I'm fairly certain it's going to make both of us much better.
You know what? I will give you a stipulation.
Mm-hmm.
I will accept Dan Girardi for Corey Perry if I can get PK Subban for, let me see my team 1 second. For Antoine Vermette.
This deal is in your inbox. Right now. It is there right now. Totally.
Both trades.
Both. Just, it's there. I think that I am well on my way to defending my ISHL East championship with this deal.
I don't know. Maybe I'll have to think about it.
Alright, buddy. We've been talking for way too long. So why don't we sign up and say good night?
Good night and good luck. I've always wanted to say that.
To you as well. And we're done. Alright, big thanks are needed to Asking Alexandria for their song Moving On in the outro. Support the official release at AskingAlexandria.com. Thanks to my boy and co-producer Jason Kuang for his help. Find him at JK All The Way on Twitter without 3 for the E.